My support fibro friends, hello, hello. I know it's been a while since I've done all these lives. How is everybody doing? Please leave a comment. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Give a shout out, give us an emoji. Let us know how you're feeling. What are you up to this weekend? We've had a gap from this live, and I apologize. You guys have to hold me accountable to do this more frequently. There's been a lot going on behind the scenes, but I do want to check in and say hello. I know there's a lot going on around the country and around the world. So, hello to all my friends in Taiwan, all our support fibro friends in Taiwan, sending you a lot of healing hugs and stuff going through the earthquake. And I just saw the news that there was an earthquake on the East Coast, which is unexpected. As someone that's grown up around earthquakes, I know how jolting it can be because they come as a surprise. So shout out to all our support fibro friends out there. And I know there's storm systems, so we're all not feeling great. We just had a lot of rain over here on the West Coast as well, and extreme weather seems to be the theme today. But come on in, leave us a comment, let us know what you're tuning in from. You can keep watching. This recording will be live on all of our channels. If you're watching on Facebook, please leave a comment, share the content. Stay tuned for more information. If you're watching on YouTube, definitely subscribe to the channel. Let other people know about subscribing to the channel, and to our Facebook friends too. Be sure to subscribe to YouTube, because what we've done recently on our YouTube channel is we have taken some of the conference presentations. And so we have been uploading just the presentations from the conference. The full conference is still available with all those Q&As. And I still got to go in and add timestamps, but you can watch just the presentations of our guests. So we've been uploading those. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can follow along, watch and rewatch the presentations as much as you can. Leave a comment, ask us for more content as well as we get started. So what is new? There's been a lot of advocacy going on in March. It's been a busy month. Last month was huge and busy for advocacy. So I was in DC for about 3 weeks, and I was working not only on fibromyalgia advocacy, but I was supporting headache disorders, which was a lot of fun, and doing some other advocacy for healthcare policy work as well. So I have a presentation that I'm going to try to see, and let's see if I'm a little bit rusty at this. It's been a while. But let's just talk about a little bit of what's new. Okay, I appreciate what's going on, so stay tuned for more information. We have some interviews coming up this year, and we've been putting that together. So we've started to record those interviews. We want to schedule more guests. If you have a particular guest that you want to see, please let us know. Leave in the comments what type of guest we could try to facilitate and come to share and do interviews. Hello, my friend. It's so good to see you. I hope that your mom made it and everything and connected with you. I know that there's a lot going on. So again, sending all of these good vibes out to our good friends in Taiwan. That it was a huge magnitude of an earthquake. So it's a lot to go through. And again, having experience being raised around a lot of earthquakes, we never want to see those types of numbers come up, because it can be very devastating and cause a lot of structural damage around and very close to the epicenter and widespread. So it's good to see you, Carrie. We'll have to catch up. Please, please follow My Several Worlds, and we'll definitely add some links and get it shared in the comments so you can follow her accounts, and then also support bloggers. And she writes an amazing blog. She updates her blog all the time, her website of content, and Fibro Nerd shirts are on sale, which is something I need to include in a separate video. And Carrie, remind me, maybe I should do a sort of commercial for the t-shirts. We can figure out a commercial. That way you can go to the store that Carrie has on her website and purchase a Fibro Nerds t-shirt, buttons, stickers. There's all kinds of swag, and there's more to come from that. So I know it's a different time zone for her. So we'll catch up. Yes, you've had way too much adrenaline. I agree, but I will share, and I'm going to work on that video and maybe have it as a bumper so people can support. We are doing a lot of fundraising, so all of this goes to support different, any type of fundraising. We have a fundraising going on right now for spring flowers as well. So this is all going to support fibromyalgia related programs. And I'll talk about more of the fundraising for research shortly in the deck of like what's new and what we're going to go through today as well. I did want to briefly just again shout out to everyone who are beautiful, beautiful advocates that joined us in Washington, D.C. So we had our team leaders join us. A few of our team leaders joined us in D.C. in March, and we took the week and took a lot of meetings over the House and at the Senate side to talk about fibromyalgia specific research and funding. So I appreciate these beautiful women that joined us and beautiful advocates that joined us at the Hill. And it was great to be in person, which is different from virtual. So we've all been doing virtual for the last 3 years. We're going to do hybrid meetings as well as we continue the advocacy, but I appreciate them joining us. It was important to take these meetings in person, and they did an amazing job. And again, we always hear from our congressional representatives that it is important to keep coming back. We have to keep showing up, keep sharing the information about fibromyalgia, keep letting our representatives know what we need. And so we've continued this, and it's always a different experience because I think if you talk to a lot of the advocates that have joined us in DC, you'll notice it's different from doing it virtual, and the significance and the value of it because we're fighting for millions of fibromyalgia patients out there. And fibromyalgia is completely underfunded, and they've neglected how to classify fibromyalgia, which I'm going to get into, and the reasons we continue to do this. It's really appalling, and to neglect millions and millions of patients. And this is worldwide, but I mean, for the advocacy that we're doing, it's in the United States. And there's millions of us in the United States, and it's been overlooked, pushed aside. So here we come to Washington, D.C., and we say, we need the attention on fibromyalgia. We need to be classified correctly across the board in our public health agencies. We need this research funding. It's super important. So these are the things that we are talking about when we go to Washington, D.C. And I value people that can join us when we make these trips. These trips are very strategic in our meetings that we have set up. I know the first year we did this, it was a lot of people, and structurally it was tough to manage. So these were very strategic meetings with people who are on the appropriations request committee, and also just again building relationships. Our team leaders are continuing to build these relationships with their representatives so they can also go and meet them in district, attend other events as well. And it's definitely about relationship building and understanding, gaining that support, gaining that awareness for what the fibromyalgia community needs. And we have paid attention to this because for all the people out there, just to let you know, it's very confusing, and this trickles down to how you get treated at the doctor's office. And we hear this again and again, and this has been happening for decades, that doctors just don't understand how to treat fibromyalgia. We feel dismissed. And this is really a systemic issue. So what we're working on is systemic transformation that can sustain itself over time, but it does start at these public health agencies. So the CDC, to let everybody know, CDC, you need to wake up and you need to change your classification. Right now, they continue to classify fibromyalgia as an arthritic condition. It is not, and this is where a disagreement happens. So all of the surveillance data, and when we go to these meetings, the states representatives and stuff are asking us the prevalence of fibromyalgia in the states. It's not collected separately. So what's happening is with the CDC putting fibromyalgia under the very large category of an arthritic condition, all the surveillance data gets put into arthritis. So if you're trying to figure out data for fibromyalgia, you're going to have to look at the briefings for each public health state and look at arthritis and see how they categorize it. So if we approach it that way, there's even extra millions of people managing this condition. And this is the disagreement they have, because if you look at the NIH says that this is not an arthritic condition. And they're non-committal though. So they haven't fully committed to where this lands in the categories because they tend to think musculoskeletal pain, but they now admit that this is changing. So they admit to neural pathways. Something is going on in the brain and the spinal cord, right? But they haven't fully committed. And so this is what we're also working on. We're getting these public health agencies to commit, because if we get this classification correct, your doctors out there can actually look at this information and be like, okay, this is starting to make sense. It translates to all of your doctors out there. They have something to reference. Everybody can come to some sort of agreement of what is happening. Maybe we still don't understand the full cause, but we're dedicated to doing that because we don't know the full cause, but we are starting to reveal new information on what is happening and what is going on within fibromyalgia patients. And I do want to say there is some spam that keeps coming up in Facebook. Please ignore these people. You can report it. You can hide their comments. I don't know. Facebook, you got to get it together. There's a lot of spam and it's really annoying and we don't need it. And for some reason, you flag all of us. So Facebook, get your act together, please. It takes up a lot of energy to manage the spam, and we're trying to reach as many fibromyalgia patients out there. So for all of you out there, please share this content with fibromyalgia warriors. Let them know about the Support Fibromyalgia Network. Let them know about all the advocacy that's happening. You're not alone in this fight. We are definitely doing a lot of work to move fibromyalgia forward and address the needs that need to happen here. So what I am going to talk about a lot is these top level systemic changes. And it's something that's been on my mind because it's a lot to process strategically. And when we go to Washington, D.C., we always come back and learn more. And so we process it. We may have to re-strategize a little bit and we think about it. We understand now we're going to have to go more to the NIH and be like, hey, what's up with this? What's up with the funding? How do we get this classified? We need funding to get this classified. So we're connecting all the dots. So this is something that we are working on a top level, but we also don't want to forget that there's immediate needs that the community does need. So if you're out there and need, we need to work on that. So what we're going to be doing is patient education. A lot of educational content will be coming through on the YouTube channel. We're writing blogs and content for the website as well. We have the Inspire Network, that is a community network without spam like this that's happening on Facebook that you can join. So we're going to be adding content to all of these different communities. That way you get the education that you need. Now, I did want to address there's some new I forgot. Shout out to my California team. So this was a picture from the Alliance for Headache Disorders. So we did an advocacy for advocating for headache disorders. We had different asks and we did similar things where we went around to the offices and met with our representatives. So shout out to everybody on my California team. It was so much fun. And again, it's so inspiring to actually work with other advocates around the country and talk to our representatives and let them know the needs of the patient care, right? This is patient-centered. We need to develop patient-centered care. And people do listen. It matters. And they take it in. And it's always a fun experience. It is tiring. It does take a lot of effort, but it's an important piece of the puzzle. So I do encourage anyone out there, if you're interested in joining or learning more, please reach out. This is something we're doing together. It's a mentorship. We need to expand this so more people learn. It's a learning process because we're going to have to continue doing this all around the country and spread awareness and support each other. We not only spend time on fibromyalgia specific advocacy, but as I mentioned, I joined headache disorders. We do things with patients rising. So healthcare policy changes. So you can get involved with all of the above. As your energy permits, there are ways to do this virtually, sending emails or in district in your own state for meeting your representatives. All of it counts. All of it's important for the fibromyalgia community. It does make a difference and advocacy does matter. I did want to call your attention to this new information and research that happened last year. So I was watching the neuroinflammation lab from Dr. Jared Younger. If you haven't subscribed to their YouTube channel, please go and do that right away. Please like their Facebook page because he is putting out lots of great information and content. I think he's actually putting out a video once a week. This was something that he flagged in a video, and I'm going to show you the thumbnail so you can look for it. Detecting neuroinflammation with brain imaging. Great video. Watch it. You may have to watch it multiple times because he does talk about what happened in this particular study since he was involved. And hello to Chloe. You can watch her presentation on our YouTube channel now as well, where she talks about additional research that she has been involved with when it comes to fibromyalgia. A lot of good information with LPS and more talks of the immune response when it comes to fibromyalgia. So again, another more evidence of neuroinflammation showing up in fibromyalgia. So the results of this particular research study are largely consistent with other researchers that we've heard from. Dr. Marco Loggia presented, so that involvement. So there was a study from 2017 and that 2019, the one that Dr. Marco Loggia had talked about in our conference our first year. So these, again, we're piling more and more evidence of neuroinflammation in fibromyalgia. So we're talking about brain inflammation, spinal cord inflammation. So in this particular research, again, they just wanted to report they are seeing an increase in TSPO binding in fibromyalgia in different regions of the brain. So there's multiple regions of the brain involved. So this is again supporting the hypothesis that fibromyalgia involves microglia-mediated neuroinflammation in several regions of the brain. This was also showing additional regions that some of the past studies did not show. So it's a lot, and you can go through, and I want to do separate videos to highlight some of these different regions to understand what processing is going on. And when you talk about the brain and talk about the different lobes, you have association areas, you have motor areas that are all involved, and everything's connected. Everything's connected together, and they are seeing inflammation in certain parts of the limbic system of the brain too. So there's a lot of involvement in pain, and it's starting to make much more sense in connecting the dots because our brain is connected to everything else. Our brain is connected to our spinal cord. There's an intense amount of cranial nerves, spinal nerves, all involved with these systems. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of medicine forgets to go back to basic anatomy and physiology. Because once you go back and you see these diagrams, you're starting to understand the complexity of how everything's connected and how these symptoms start to make sense. When you look at things like the brain stem, when you look at where the cranial nerves connect, and all of the nervous system that's involved. So you don't just have you have the central nervous system and you have the peripheral nervous system, which includes the autonomic nervous system. So it's very, very complex. And unfortunately, I think we discount fibromyalgia way too much in these complexities. And what we're trying to do here at the Support Fibromyalgia Network, and I know people hear me all the time on my soapbox, is we're trying to shift the research into more of the biology. And I know you heard this a lot with the biopsychosocial. I feel a lot of research is too heavy-handed on the psychosocial. This is my opinion. And so I would love to see much more of a shift onto the bio side. So let's get some of this pathophysiology down. Let's get it in so that we never have to really disagree on classification. I've told people recently I've been taking nursing classes, and in the nursing class, it says fibromyalgia is a psychiatric disorder. And the same thing too. I was really disappointed. Ninja Nerd, you need to change this. I was watching the IBS video and he refers to fibromyalgia as a psychiatric disorder. And I was very, very upset. I sent an email. Please update this information because it is super important we get this correct. Because when you're talking about prescribing medications and not understanding the root cause, you're probably doing worse damage to people's brains than you even know of if they don't need that neurotransmitter shift. And there's a lot of neurotransmitters involved with the brain. And so if we're seeing inflammation actually as this root cause, that needs to be addressed. I mean, yes, everybody's going to be genetically different when it comes to production of neurotransmitters in the brain. And so maybe there is a need for that in certain people, but some of us see huge, huge side effects when we take those medications. So we have to really be careful of what line of thinking we're taking when it comes to medicine. And that's why I encourage you out there, if you are training other medical providers, please start to look at this updated evidence of information when it comes to research. It's valuable. You're going to change how patients are treated, and it's a different approach. So, if we start to get at this core of inflammation and understand that because of this, we're probably seeing some systemic inflammation involved, we're definitely treating things differently. So, we're going to be approaching our patient care very differently, and it's super important. We need to get this message out to our medical providers because I know they're frustrated with this. So please definitely take a look at this, watch this video. It's a really good video. Dr. Younger does a tremendous job. Subscribe to their YouTube channel because, again, he keeps putting out videos once a week. He talked about how a grant got rejected, which was important information for us to take in because these are the things that we're being told by the NIH that the PIs need to keep applying for, keep applying for. Honestly, they make it sound a lot easier than it actually is, but hearing from Dr. Younger in the actual process, it seems like it's taking a lot of energy to do this. So how can we support our researchers? We definitely need to take a look at this neuroinflammation. And I know, shout out to Danielle, I see you there. Danielle and I are having this discussion, and we have been investigating different sites that have that fMRI machine, the neuroinflammation labs around the country, because it would be really cool to fund a study. Let's see if we can get 100 patients around the country at potentially 3 different sites. So we have Dr. Younger, Dr. Logia, and we find another site on the West Coast to replicate this type of research. And I know people are like, well, one study had 15 patients, one had 31, but it makes a difference. So if we can get more patients in, and I know recruitment is going to be a pain, but if we can do this and replicate this study with more patients, and we help these researchers that are interested in neuroinflammation fund this, I get really excited because this is going to really show some more definitive answers that we need. And again, just going back to some of this inflammation. So, what we're talking about is specific inflammation. This can be short or chronic of the nervous system. So, the brain and spinal cord are involved. And neuroinflammation is present in a variety of brain diseases. A lot of research has been done in neuroinflammation when it comes to neurodegenerative diseases. And this could be a talking point because we don't want to end up with any of the neurodegenerative diseases. And if you have this in your family, understanding the effect of neuroinflammation and what it leads to. And so during neuroinflammation, we have these microglia. So these are the brain immune cells, and we keep learning more and more as we study the science, and as technology advances and gets better, we can get better at our imaging, which is exciting. There's also astrocytes, that are support cells. So these become activated and release various inflammatory mediators such as cytokines and things like chemokines as well. So these are inflammatory responses. And normally it's localized to the brain, but unfortunately, as you get into this chronic neuroinflammation, over time, it compromises the blood-brain barrier. And previous research has always thought the blood-brain barrier was impermeable to things. But now we know leaky brain, just like we talk about leaky gut and this systemic inflammation. So we're leading to systemic inflammation. And this influx, we're going to have an influx of systemic immune cells. So this is where the lymphocytes get involved, lymphocytes into the brain. So as the blood-brain barrier starts to break down, it further worsens neuroinflammation. And we don't want permanent neural damage. This is what we have to investigate further, and also why we can't take autoimmune off the table in the attack of what's happening in the brain system, in the nervous system. Do we have any attack of the nerves when it comes to this, or pain nerves? But there's a lot involved, and that's why it's unfortunate that fibromyalgia gets so discounted in the science. And we need to go back to our basic anatomy and physiology and understand this science. And that's why I appreciate researchers like Dr. Younger doing a tremendous amount of work. It's important for all that we're doing. And it gets us back into all of this because that research study that we just shared with Dr. Younger being involved is important. And then please definitely watch the video where Dr. Alogia goes through the other research study, which was of 2019, showing the presence of neuroinflammation in the brains. It was huge. And it was a big deal. And this is why, because, and I know people, some doctors have been critical because 31 patients, fibromyalgia patients, 27 controls, and this was published in Brain Behavior and Immunity. So you can find that from the 2019. I'll be sure to share of what they found. But the good thing was for this particular study was that it was two independent groups. So one in Massachusetts General and the other group at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. So both those groups saw the same patterns of microglial activation in fibromyalgia patients, but not in the controls. So the collaboration of these two groups led to the study being published. And as both groups saw the same results, it really enhances the validity, like how valid some of these findings are. So with this kind of development, these are going to lead to therapeutic targets that can be researched further and hopefully helping actually translate into different treatments that we need. And we see neuroinflammation across the board in some of the other chronic illness diseases. There's definitely an overlap in overall symptoms, which makes sense. So that's the like, okay, so we need research. We need research funding. I have a feeling we're going to have to do this with all of us funding it directly, which may come down to it. But the largest funder in our country is the NIH. They spend a lot of money on research. So the target for what we do in Washington, D.C. is, hello, fibromyalgia needs funding. And this is an important piece of the puzzle. So we talk to our congressional leaders and let them know that fibromyalgia isn't getting funded appropriately. It does not match the prevalence. And then if you break down some of the funding, it's a little peculiar when we need to have fibromyalgia specific funding and not all of it is going to fibromyalgia, or it doesn't translate well to the patient community. So this is a huge issue. And anybody can look this up. I'll add a link. So these are the estimates of funding for various research and conditions and disease categories. You can search right now in Google at the NIH categorical spending, and it'll come up and you can find these reports. But I will be sure to post the link. Let's see if I can do it without crashing out my computer right now for you. So I just posted that link right here. And you can go to it. And what I normally like to tell people to do is to search for fibromyalgia. So you can search, you can see how much is being spent on fibromyalgia specific research, supposedly. And it breaks down the years and the funding. So you can see based on the prevalence of fibromyalgia, if we have anywhere from 6 to 12 million US adults diagnosed, which I really think is very low and inaccurate. Again, all of the data is somewhere else and it hasn't pieced together all of this. So we don't even have accurate account for how many people are actually living with fibromyalgia. And the fact that it can coexist with autoimmune conditions. And we hear people diagnosed with things like lupus, RA, and fibromyalgia, which again, you can have fibromyalgia as a diagnosis along with those conditions. We really don't have accurate information. So funding is important. And as you can see, it has not increased very much at all, which is very disappointing based on the prevalence. So this is stuff that we are bringing up in our meetings and we need to address. And we go to the NIH, we tell them, we ask them questions. They have to open up grants for this. And what we're really asking for is this classification. Let's do this brain research. Let's do this neuroinflammation once and for all to get an understanding of all the areas that are lighting up when we see this for inflammation. What else is going on that might be involved that we haven't seen before? Because even when we talk about pain perception and, inputs going into the spinal cord up to the brain, it's hypersensitive. It's all these terms that we hear all the time. Central sensitization, like all of this. Okay, so we have the spinal cord involved, we have the brain involved. We know this. Now let's dive into more specific details, and we're pushing for funding to be directed here, but it's a multi-tier approach. So we got to go to our congressional representatives, we got to go to the NIH, and we're going to have to figure out what to do with the CDC. They really need to change that classification because as it lives under arthritis, a lot of things are going to look, as far as what they spell out for treatment, to look and parallel arthritis. So now in arthritis, a lot of people are told, you got to move your body. So you're going to see a lot of this similarity in treatment that arthritis patients get is going to parallel what fibromyalgia patients are going to be told. So it's crucial that the CDC change this. And we need to get on their case too. But first, it's all this research funding. So it's important that you understand. You can take a look and then you can click on these years and then you can look at the research that has been funded and you can do a deeper dive and you can get more information on the research that has been funding. And so this is why I say we need to shift more to the bio side. So we've had a lot of repetitive funding. And I know all research is important when I say this, but it needs to start translating better into the doctor's offices, into the patient community. We need to have translational research. And there's been a lot of repetition, and I still don't see the same results, or it's still mixed. It's the ineffectiveness. Again, I think we're thinking too much on the side of psychiatric or arthritic. So we really have to shift that. And I have seen some recent studies. They are looking at more rat models for fibromyalgia. So there's someone doing that. I'm going to reach out to some of these researchers that are doing that type of research and see how we can support them because it's important. We're trying to shift what we see. And so you're going to look when you click on those dollar amounts. So those are in millions. And also feel free to look at other chronic diseases. I know that we're not trying to compare each other. It's not a competition. It does feel like that though. So when people come to us and they want to advocate for other things, I understand. When we go to Washington, D.C., from our network itself, we are asking about fibromyalgia specific research because if you look at some of the funding for other things that people talk about, cannabidiol research, chronic pain, I want you to really take a look at how much is already being funded because that has two separate categories in itself. Billions of dollars are already going into that research funding. Millions, 500 million, like billions of dollars are already getting funded in that. And so you can see how much our dollar, we have super low dollar amounts. You can't even buy a cup of coffee for the amount that they're funding fibromyalgia. So this is a huge issue based on the prevalence, based on how less our quality of life is. It's serious. And this is the case that we make because more fibromyalgia patients end up in the hospital. They're 2 times as likely. There's a very huge decrease in quality of life. We need to change this for fibromyalgia patients. And this is stuff that we talk about with our congressional representatives. So again, we take this information, we walk around Capitol Hill. It's definitely a different experience than being virtual or being in district in your state. I highly recommend it. Please join us if you're interested. We are going to be doing more hybrid training first because we want people to get acquainted with the language. And we want to make sure, again, you're okay with talking about fibromyalgia specific asks. There's other ways to get involved. As I mentioned, if you are interested in other healthcare policy, we do work with organizations like Patients Rising. We were there for headache disorders. We support other organizations doing this type of advocacy work. But when we're there, we're asking for fibromyalgia specific research funding. And as you can see, it's super low. So that's why we have to hone in on fibromyalgia. So we have these meetings. I hope that everybody feels empowered when they join us and they leave. I know it can be an exhausting experience, but rally around all of these advocates that join us throughout the years in person. It takes dedication, and I hope it's been a fulfilling experience for people as we move forward, because we need to continue this and we need to mentor everyone to continue this. We need to mentor, we need to change things for the next generation. So we have different generations joining us from 30s, 20s, 14-year-olds. Shout out to Lily out there. Thank you so much for being our youngest member to join us in Capitol Hill. We have had people at different age ranges, and it's important to teach people the importance of advocacy. We're gonna do this. I believe it. I don't know how long it's gonna take, but I promise you, we will make these systemic changes. And then also we will provide more immediate need support, because I know this is a defeating illness to try to manage. We don't have the doctors trained as well as I would love. And that's another step that we want to do over here, is to get these medical providers trained. And this is a task and a hurdle in itself. And to let people know too, I know a lot of people write us in asking us for a fibromyalgia doctor. So there's no fibromyalgia specialist in a conventional sense. So in a conventional medicine sense, where people are trained as a fibromyalgia specialty. You might hear some medical providers call them specializing in fibromyalgia, but they kind of take what they've hypothesized with working with a lot of fibromyalgia patients, and then they share that with the community. So that's different than what I'm talking about. So what we would love to eventually build not only is, fundamental training and medical education in fibromyalgia across the board, but also starting to develop fibromyalgia specialists. So we can take from neurology, rheumatology, primary care, pain management, and start to really hone in to do fellowship programs and training. We obviously need those experts to help us train. I am not a medical doctor. Working on gaining that, at least to start training some nurses in the future, NPs, PAs, all of that matters. And to also let people know, primary care has historically never been involved with medical education for fibromyalgia. It's been a lot. There's been a lot of different subsets of teachings and predominantly focused on rheumatology, but now we have this major issue. So as I said, the CDC still is putting fibromyalgia under arthritis, which causes a lot of problems because they still believe in why they do this, that rheumatologists are the best professions to treat fibromyalgia. And there's been a shift across the American College of Rheumatology that is saying, well, we don't have enough treatment modalities that are actually effective. If you have other conditions that can be treated by a rheumatologist, they will bring you in and help out and treat your fibromyalgia in conjunction, but they're really stuck. And this is nothing on them. We don't have the resources. We don't have the research showing them what's happening. But now you're more than likely going to potentially start to find more and more rheumatologists that are going to defer to primary care pain management for your actual treatment. So they can diagnose fibromyalgia. They can help you with any diagnosis of other conditions, because autoimmune diseases are prevalent in our community. Autoimmune conditions tend to run together. They like to party together. So they can help you manage that. But you're going to see more and more, if you haven't already experienced this, that primary care is going to be deferred for the treatment of your fibromyalgia. And again, just a reminder, we have not emphasized medical education for primary care physicians. So this is historically has not, I haven't seen it. I've been involved in this community. I started doing volunteer work in 2002. I was diagnosed in 1995 and treated more like a psychiatric disorder, which practically ruined my life. So I'm so happy to be alive and talking to you now. That's why it's vital we get this correct, because we're just throwing prescriptions at people, and we're like have 180 different treatment modalities that can be used. So we got to hone it in. We definitely need to change the diagnostic criteria at some point. You need to be getting blood tests. So this is something that primary care can offer you. Please get fundamental blood tests run, even if you have a diagnosis of fibromyalgia and people say, oh, you won't see anything. Please get it run. Just make sure you don't have things like you're not anemic, you don't have any glucose issues, you're not diabetic, all of those things, deficiencies in other areas. It's important for you to get those blood tests, continue to document these blood tests. And again, don't devalue the inflammation markers. There's some hints, and even Dr. Younger posted about it in his video with comments that he's seen a slight elevation. And again, when people see these elevation markers, the doctors see it in your SED rate or CRP, they're looking for really high values. But even Dr. Younger posted that he's starting to see elevated values slightly in patients. So it's something to note, but your doctors aren't going to be like, oh, that's really high. You might have really high values indicating more inflammation going on, autoimmune components. So keep an eye on it right now. It's going to take a lot of patient advocacy. So things are in your lap right now. And we're trying to work as hard as possible to get this fixed. And as you can hear from my voice, this is systemic change that needs to happen from the top. And in the meantime, we'll be providing you a lot of education on what to do, as we try to work on these systemic changes. But the hurdles to train medical providers is very large. And even as we speak by medical schools, it's a challenge. And as I mentioned, even in my nursing curriculum, they refer to fibromyalgia as a psychiatric disorder, and it is not a psychiatric disorder. That has definitely gone away. But the fact that this training is still there, that means we're still training our nurses that is what we believe the diagnosis to be, and that's how we're going to be treated when we go to a hospital or a medical center, which is very disappointing. So we have a lot of changes to do. We need to get our medical providers involved. Anyone that wants to get involved in training fibromyalgia, other medical providers, please join us. Please join us in other fundraising activities. I think it's super important that we all join together. If you love fundraising, we need your help because we are looking at funding. I think we're probably going to have to do it ourselves, but who knows? I will be at the NIH multiple times this year in the summer. So I'm just going to directly ask them, how do we get research like the neuroinflammation research funded directly? We need to get this done, multi-sites. As I said, let's fund Dr. Younger, Logia. So we have Alabama, we'll have Boston, and then we need another neuroinflammation lab on the West Coast. Let's get patients in. We'll have to do clinical trials, get people enrolled. Let's see what the brain shows us in these studies. We're going to have to do it and just probably fund it ourselves. So if you are great at fundraising, please shout out, email us, or you want to do some fundraising. Every little dollar is going to count to make this happen. It's going to be a huge change and shift because we are still going to work and ask the NIH for funding, and we've been diligent. We submitted a lot of appropriations requests out there. Shout out to Crystal for submitting some as well. And then we've taken some and continued as we met with a lot of senators, and we did meet with some congressional leaders that helped to submit appropriations requests on the House side as well. And we had different asks going on. So if we can get this funded through the NIH, even better. But a lot is to come to fund this type of research because we have to change the categories, or if the CDC, if anybody knows people at the CDC willing to change these categories, please do that. We can do that without any money, right? We just have the doctors reevaluate some of the leading evidence and just move it over. I can even help them change the website if that would help. I'll do that for free just so that we can change this category, get this out. We need to change the medical literature, and we're going to do it. So thank you for hanging on with me today. I appreciate everybody. And I know I've been behind on these lives, but we have been updating some of the presentation content from the conference alone. So take a look at that. There's some good information. Chloe Jones, who works with Doc in the Younger lab, we did that presentation. So we took apart the research studies for you so you can watch that. This is, again, emphasizing the immune response in fibromyalgia. Dr. Salebi's information on other treatments. So he talks a little bit about LDN and other treatments you may want to talk to your medical provider about. We will be continuing to add more content on LDN because that's a huge question. I want to do more survey asks on the type of medications that are helping you. I am a little concerned about some in particular. And I'm also concerned that antipsychotics are making a comeback in the fibromyalgia community. And I know some of us are more sensitive to medications than other. So please understand that if you have a sensitivity, but you are still looking at the medication route, talk to your doctor about a decreased dosage. And I've talked to a lot of rheumatologists when it comes to prescribing different medications for fibromyalgia patients that they take the lowest dose and then they put that in half. And that's about as much as some of their fibromyalgia patients can do. And that's kind of where they leave them at. They don't need much. Some people need more, but definitely please take a look. And as someone wrote too, yeah, I just want to emphasize when you get prescribed medication, and this is something that's a passion of mine and why I really want to get into nursing as well. Understand what category these medications are in. Again, not everybody is going to have the same genetics. Not everybody is going to process these medications the same way in neurotransmitters and how our brain works. And if something does work for you, I just want to celebrate because that is good news. It doesn't always work for all of us, or some of us, like myself, have a lot of side effects. And this is where the dosing could matter, or maybe you just don't need it because there are targets, as you said, it's different. There are separate targets, and especially when you're dealing with some of the antidepressants, any of the other things that go on where it shifts neurotransmitters, you may not need that. And that's why you're feeling the side effect. And please definitely document if you get a new medication added. I encourage you to write it down on the date you started it and start to document things a little bit more specifically in how you're feeling, how to adjust it, what's going on, because then that way you can link it back to any changes that are happening, especially when you're on multiple medications. It gets very complicated. And do write down not only the medications you're taking, but the supplements that you're taking and any over-the-counter medications do count. As someone that had to take a lot of antihistamines in this realm, it is important to also list those because those matter. And there's a lot of moderate effects of some of these medications. If you're in the autoimmune bracket and they're looking to treat you with some of the fibromyalgia FDA approved, there's some moderate overlap and you could have some side effects involved with that. And I'm not sure why this is not being addressed. So please talk to your doctor and pharmacist. I don't know why some of the pharmacists may not bring this up, but that's why you need to just ask and be an advocate for yourself. So thank you everyone for tuning in to this Friday. I promise we'll be back, but we will be back with more content. We are setting up interviews. If there's anyone that you want to hear from, please let us know. Hi, Amber. It's so great to see you. I'm going to go through the comments and reply as well. I am Melissa Talwar. I am the executive director of the Support Fibromyalgia Network. I am also a board certified functional medicine health coach with additional training in functional nutrition and neuroscience. Crossing fingers, I will be a full-fledged nursing student soon. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I will definitely reply to the comments and check in with you later. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.